He is good. If you could, I want you to be seated just for the next few moments. I told the elders earlier this morning I'm a little outside of my comfort zone because I like to preach. I'm a preacher. I like to hit it 0 to 60 and don't care what's behind me or what's in front of me, I'm going. And this morning I'm having to do some teaching. And I struggle with that, not because I can't do it, it's because it's not my comfort. My wife is a teacher. I'm not a teacher. And this morning I want us to kind of go back to the basics of who we are. This morning we're kicking off a series called I Love My Church. Got a cool looking shirt to go with it. I love my church. They're on sale, by the way. Just throw that commercial right there. But there's something about this series that there's an excitement about. Because I think when we begin to come to church and we consistently come or inconsistently come, whatever it may be, we get the idea and the mentality that the church is something I have to do. We talk about going to church like there is an option. Well, come on, somebody. Where's Mary Beth? Get back there. Let's go. Forget about teaching. I'm going to preach. But we think that going to church is an option. When I was growing up, it was no option. I was going to church. There was no option. You sick? Okay, get in the car. They'll pray for you when we get there. I mean, you sleepy? Well, you're going to sleep in the middle of Amazing Grace. You're going to go to church. I remember a comedian. Anybody know Mark Lowry? Anybody heard of Mark Lowry? Okay. He said it one time. He said, one morning he woke up and he told his mom, he said, Mama, I'm sick. I'm sick. And she said, well, what's wrong, baby? He said, my belly hurts. I feel like I'm going to throw up. And she said, well, throw up and prove it. And she said, and after I threw up, she said, well, don't you feel better now? Now get in the car, we're going to church. There is no option. It was a given that in a generation prior to my generation, that there was no questioning our children, do you want to go to church today, baby? Do you feel like going to church? Do you have a late night playing video games? I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have bought you that Xbox. I'm so sorry. And what happens is we have now got a group of Christians or so-called wannabe Christians that are weak and they don't understand the simple subject of standing for your faith because they don't even understand what their faith is because they don't go to church. This past year has been a year of momentum shifts. We've had one shift one way, we'll have one shift another, we'll have another. We had a great egg hunt this past year. Over 350 people came to our egg hunt this past year. First year, in about 10 years, right? 10, 12 years, we had 350. Great reviews. Said, man, this was one of the smoothest for a church your size. I'm like, well, thank you. We'll take it. Then we turn around and we have VBS. We had, I think, 32 kids the first night, or 32 people the first night. But on Wednesday night, we had over 110 people. I really think the only reason they came was to watch me get a pie in the face. But that's beside the point. They were here at 115 or so. Then we had a fall festival, a harvest festival. We had over 800 people on our property that night. And then we closed out the year. There you go. We close out the year and God just shifts us in a service that really got us prepared for what's next. And what's happening is we can talk about going to church, but we talk about going to church like we talk about going to Walmart. If I were to tell you, everybody get ready, we're going to go here. Put on that first picture for me. If I was to tell people, we pack it up, we are going to see the mouse. How many of you would say, I'm gone, I'm with you? Some of you might probably be like, I'll let me go get my grandkids, then I will go. Some of y'all will be like, okay, well, we're just going to go for the food. Yeah, amen. Yeah. But when I showed you that picture, a lot of y'all just went, because you automatically understood what that was. And there became an excitement. When we tell our girls that we're going to Disney, can I tell you something? Tiff and I are just as excited as they are. We're ready to go. I mean, let's go. And we've got our itinerary planned out. We're ready to go because there's an excitement with going to Disney World. Now put up the next picture. If I'm going to tell you right now, we are about to go to urgent care. What? Yes, that's what I was looking for right there. If I were to tell you, pack it up, we're going to the doctor's office. What would be a thought? I heard yippee. Pray for me? Yeah. Okay. What about the next one? We are getting ready to go grocery shopping. We're going to Kroger. Y'all rejoiced on that one. My Lord. Woo. The first word would be yes, the salad bar. Yes. Okay, what about the next one? We are going to Ohio B&B. Yes. Can I get I love going to the Ohio B&B. Anybody? How about this one right here? We are going to... Man, some of y'all are rejoicing over Walmart. What in the world? What are we coming down to? But what I want you to understand is this. What would happen if I said we're going to church? Why y'all gotta be so spiritual this morning? Come on, y'all gotta help me out. You're hurting my point. There you go. But what would happen in today's society if you tell a child, we're going to Five Below to get you something? So get in the car and let's go. Do you think they would be excited? But what if you told that same child that has not been made to, or I shouldn't say made, but has not had the opportunity to go to church whenever the doors are open because mom and dad or grandparents don't make it priority. And you look at them and say, okay, I know you had a late night last night, but get in the car, we're going to church this morning. What do you think their response would be? They would come, they wouldn't want to come, they would gripe and complain, and they would give you an attitude, right? What's happened is this. We go around talking about I go to church like we go there like we go into Walmart. Or like we're going to Kroger because it's a want, it's got a want that I need. So I'm going because I've always gone. It's not that I'm plugged in anywhere or I'm planted somewhere. It's because I always go. And what happens is this. I can say, I love my church. I'm going to my church. And guess what? Somebody's going to look at you and say, why? Why do you love your church? Why do you love Freedom House that owns 40 acres in Trenton, Ohio? Why do you love Freedom House that has a daycare that's a part of the ministries of the church? Why do you love Freedom House? Because they have Freedom Village. Why do you love Freedom House? What is there that I can get at home? Well, you say I love my church, but yet you don't even go all the time. If you spend time with your friends on a Saturday, you wake up on Sunday morning and you say, how do I feel this morning? Does my recliner and my ottoman feel good? Or do those green chairs feel good? That's a bad illustration, I know, but the point is you have not made it a priority. And you pick and choose what your priorities are during the weekend and during the week. And when you say, I love my church, and yet you have a bad attitude when you get to work, what makes your church different than my church? And I don't even go to church. Because we've put I love my church and I go to church in the same category as I'm going to Walmart or I'm going to a restaurant. Because what's happened is we've got a consumer mentality. It's nothing about how we can become a blessing to others or how we can grow and how we can, where we can volunteer and serve in different locations. No, it's about us walking in, being picky and choosy which Saturday and Sunday we come in or which Wednesdays we come in. But I love my church. I love it. Why? What we have to understand is we have got to get back to the basics of what it means to love my church. Because when you're saying, I love my church, you're not saying, what we see is we see a building. I love the building. I love our facilities, which we have awesome facilities. And they're just going to get better. I love what we have and what we're going to have. I love it all. And what happens is we put I love based on that. But what we're supposed to do, Jesus made this statement. This was what he was telling to his disciples. He said these words in John 13. He said, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. How will people know that you love them? You show them. Love is an action. There is one thing I can tell my wife, I love her. But unless you buy her an air fryer, that's how she is told she is loved. Men, y'all get it later, don't worry. I can say I love something. I love Red Robin. Yeah. I love Red Robin. But yet when I go into Red Robin, I have the choice to get on Yelp and leave a good review or a bad review. Because I am there to receive something from them. We are not called to love our church by what we receive from the church. We are called to love the church because he loves the church. We were not called to love a building. We were not called to love concrete. We were not called to love any electronic in the world. No, we were called to love people because Jesus died for people and he gave us the formula to grow a church. When I say I love my church, it's saying I love the ecclesia. I love the assembly. I love those that have been called apart. I love those that are in my midst. Jesus said these words. He said, if 2 or 3 of you shall gather together in my name. You don't have to have 2,300 people. You don't have to have 1,500 people. He said, but 2 or 3 of you. But you have to gather. It's not an opinion if we gather. It's making a choice in your life for your relationship with Jesus and for your relationship of your children with Jesus, that you make a choice and say, you know what, I really don't feel like going to church today, but it's not about me. It's about the next generation. Because right now, we have a generation that does not know the reasoning behind I love my church. We have a generation that they don't even comprehend the word love. They base love off of something I like a lot. I love my iPhone. I love these new clothes I got for Christmas. I love going to Kings Island. I love going to the Ohio B&B. And what happens is, they cannot comprehend when we say we love Jesus. Because they've never seen it in action because it's been an option for them. It is our responsibility as godly people and as Christians in this place to understand that going to church has got to get out of a consumer mentality, and it's got to go back into a servant mentality. Because it's not about what God can do for me. God's going to do everything. He says, if you'll seek me first, I'll bring everything to you. I'll bring you all the desires of your heart, but you got to seek me first. And when you begin to seek him first and you begin to pray, we're on a fast. What better way to seek God first than on a fast? Giving the selfishness away of the things that your body longs for, saying, you know what, I'm going to say no to caffeine. No, I'm going to say no to social media. No, I'm going to say no to gossip. No, I'm going to say no to all of these things. And I'm giving that up because I am seeking him first. And he begins to do something in you deeper than ever before. We are called to be the church. Not just to come to a building, but we are called to be the church. Many of us, we like the concept of a thriving, growing church. But a lot of times we don't want to do what it's going to cost. And I'm looking at people who have served the church for years. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for your servant's heart. You saw a need and you filled it. And you were willing to serve when nobody else was willing. And I want to say thank you. Freedom House would not be Freedom House today if it hadn't been the church 10 years ago. If people wouldn't have got the vision of saying, I want to be the church, Freedom House would not be Freedom House today. You see, in order for us to say, I love my church, and we have to understand who your church is. We are Freedom House. We are the church. We are not a building. We are the church. We are a body of believers that by the authority that's been given to us by Jesus Christ, we can see demons flee by the name of his name. We will see blinded eyes open. Why? Because we are the church. We are who Jesus died for. We are the ones that he loved. We are the church. And what we have to understand is, I want us to understand who we are. The vision of our church is to glow. And I believe what happens is we hear what it means to glow, but we don't understand how to. Our culture of a church, and if you go through Growth Track beginning on January 26th, you will understand the breakdown of who we are. In a church, we have got to lay a foundation of culture. If you go to the world, the culture tells you how to dress, how to speak, how to live your life outside of the biblical knowledge of who Jesus is, right? They tell you it's okay to cuss. They tell you it's okay to drink a little bit. They tell you it's okay if you want to smoke, go right ahead. They tell you all of these things. And what we have to understand is we create a culture in this place, a culture of longing for him. A desperation for him. And we've got to create that culture. And here is our culture. This is a place to create an experience for people to touch God, encounter Jesus, and be radically changed and empowered by the Holy Spirit. To understand it's not about a denomination, but about his kingdom come. Regardless of our skin color or the status that we are in the culture of the world. We love people, we are Christ-centered, we are authentic, we are creative, we strive for excellence in everything we do, we are generous, we worship, and we will thrive. That is the culture of Freedom House Church. And when we begin to understand that it's not about the building, but it's about building relationships with each other, we can do a whole lot more. Why? Because we do more together when we become one. The vision of the house is to glow, go, love, offer worship, and we must go into our workplaces and our communities. Love inside and outside the church, serve our community, and offer ourselves in the surrounding areas. Worship in unity, one mind, one accord. So we just won't see change, but we will be the change. That is who we are. That is the culture. That is the vision of who we are. And when we say, I love my church, we understand who we love. We love him because he's the head. And then we love each other because we're a family. I heard a pastor say one day that he said, I was getting off a boat, and this guy came pulling up beside me. He was like, "Hey, man." He's a pastor that has multiple campuses. And he said, "Hey," he's like, "I go to your church." He was like, "Yeah, that's great." He's like, "Yeah." The wife chimed in, "I go to your church too." He's like, "Well, that's awesome, yeah." And he loaded his boat, and he's like, then the kids were like, hey, we go to your church." He was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And he said after the boats, they loaded their boats, then the man said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure, definitely." He was like, would you pray for me?" He said, "Oh, yeah, definitely. I sure will." He's like, "I need you to pray for my marriage. It's crumbling." He said, oh, yeah, definitely." He's like, "I need you to pray for my job because I hate it." He's like, "Oh, okay." And he said, and all of a sudden it became like a confession moment with all of these things that the guy was going through. He was like, "Okay." He said, "Now," he said, you said you go to my church." He said, "What church do you go to? Which campus do you go to?" He's like, I don't know what they call it." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, what's the name of your campus pastor?" He said, "Because I'm going to get on the phone with this guy and say, hey, you got to follow up with this dude." And he's like, I don't. He's kind of like a short guy and got no hair. And he was like, he couldn't tell me. And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, are you part of a connect group?" No. He's like, "Well, when was the last time you came to church?" He said, "Well, I'll be honest with you, I ain't been to church since Easter." And he said automatically he understood that his strategy for talking with this guy had to change. Because when we say I go to church, there's something that's on the inside of us say, "Hey, yeah, what's up? How are you? You good?" Because we automatically think family. But then all of a sudden you look and they begin to unload on you on what they're going through, and then you find out that they hadn't been to church since Easter. The strategy to reach the lost and to maintain are different. If we're going to reach the lost, there are some of us that's going to have to roll up our sleeves and say, "You know what? My children are not going to go to hell. They might not be serving Jesus today, but I love him enough to say I love them, no matter what they say to me. I love them." The strategy has to change on whether or not we're talking to people who are involved in a church and people who have not stepped foot in the church in years or months. And the key to this is to have an environment of love. We've had people come in, we've had visitors over the last 3 weeks that's come in our church. And one couple, I asked them, I said, "How were the people?" Because I want to know where we got to work. And this is what he told me. He said, "Pastor, I've never met a friendlier church than your church." He said, "Every single person spoke to me. They hugged my neck even and told me that they were so glad to see me." And I said, "Did they really?" He said, "If I lived closer, I'd be here every Sunday." And what we want to be known as is not the church that has a stank face. I love you. No. But to say, "I love you," and begin to bend down and begin to wash their feet. Because there's a mentality that shifts when our focus shifts. This is not the year. Listen, I want to see acceleration more than anybody in this place. I want to see people pile in. We're going to have parking committee everywhere to try to get us everybody in here. I want to see that. But we've got to learn how to first say, "I love you," to our community behind us, to our community around us, because our strategy has got to change. If somebody were to ask you today, where do you go to church? And you say Freedom House, what would their response be? What would their response be? Where's that? Where's that? We've heard that many times. But here's what I want us to be known as. I want us to be known as a place that's full of creativity. That we don't look inwardly, we're always outwardly looking. Today I have the opportunity to meet with your team, your leadership team, with every ministry. And we're going to come up with a strategy on how to win our community in 2019. The reason being is this. We've lost focus too many times. And the word for 2019 is focus. We've got to get things back in focus. And the first thing is this: why do I love my church? I love my church because Jesus loves me. And he died for his church. There's a story in Matthew 16. When Jesus came to this region, he asked the disciples, "Who do people say I am?" And as soon as they got there, Jesus turns to them and he asked them this question. And they replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And then he looks at them and he says, "But who do you say I am? Who do you say I am?" And Peter, who was known for sticking his foot in his mouth, began to talk. And he said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered to him, "Blessed are you, Simon, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against you." Everything that is about our church was in that scripture. Jesus loved the church so much that he was willing to die for the church. But then he says, "I'm going to build my church on this rock." And he says, the gates of hell will not prevail. When I speak your name, darkness flees. I'm saying no to fear and yes to you. In everything we've done and everything that we are preparing for, this is the year that God is going to use Freedom House Church in a way that you've only dreamed about. Why? Because we learned how to love and we learned how to serve. And I am thanking God right now for each and every single one of you that are here today. God's calling us to be planted in a church. He tells us these words in Psalms 92. He says, "The righteous will flourish like a palm tree, and they will grow like a cedar of Lebanon." David Crank said these words. He said, "Successful things happen in your life when you are planted in a local church." When you're planted in a local church. Have you ever Googled the cedars in California? How big they get? Anybody ever been there before? Oh, y'all don't count. We got Geneva and RC and Lorinda back there, John. They say that these trees grow over 350 feet, some of them, for 3 stories tall. They said others are 3 stories wide. They said they're huge. Do you know what makes that tree successful? The tree is successful because its roots don't just cover the surface enough to get by. But the roots go down to 200 feet in the ground. But that's not where it stops. Brian McNamara. Come on, Brian, listen. But standing alone, and if the root only went down so far, the tree if I pushed it just right, would move. And it could fall. The tree's the same way. If I pushed it just right, if the wind just blew just right, it would fall. But the roots of those trees get together, entwine your arms. What? All right? The roots begin to entwine with each other, but not just at a surface level. But they grow planted. Larry, come here. They grow planted in the soil, and the roots are entwined with each other. And all of a sudden, that tree that I could push over because its roots were still in the ground, but because it has strength from another tree, and this tree has strength from another tree, I can't just begin to blow it off because they are stronger together. And how we have to see our church is we've got to understand that we're stronger together. That when the enemy comes in like a flood against one of my brothers, I'm going to be there to hold up his arms. And I'm going to stand with him side by side. I'll pull out my sword if I got to too. And I'm going to fight the battle with him. When I know the single mother's coming in this place and she needs some help, and we're going to be willing to help her. Why? Because it is our responsibility as the church. We don't just love those inside our church, and we don't love the church because of what we can get out of it. We love our church because our Heavenly Father says, they will know you by the love that you show. Why? I am grounded and I am planted in a church full of good people. If you are not planted in a church, and you're not planted yet, thank you, and you're not planted in doing ministry in the church, it's time to get rooted in. Why? Because people don't just want to see one person saying, I love my church. But something begins to change when you got about 150 people saying, man, I love my church. I love my church. Well, why? Man, you won't believe what we're doing for the community. And you won't believe that our food bank started in a little shop back here in a little building over here, and now we have a warehouse that we feed people from constantly. You don't understand. You know, why do you love my church? Well, you know what? It started out with one missionary, but now we're sending 10 and 12 out a year. You know, it started out as just something small, and now all of a sudden we're bringing people in, we're mentoring them, and we're sending them out into the community, and we're sending them out into the city and into the corporate world and proclaiming the name of Jesus. Why? It all started with one thing. It started with love and being planted. The enemy knows that if you do not get planted, that you will sit and will fall through the crack. But it's your responsibility as church people to get planted and rooted and become involved in a ministry. No matter how small it is. It can be checking in the kids on Sunday mornings and coming over to church. That's it. It can be going down and with Matt and Rachel and just praying over the students when the students are walking in and just leaving. It can be so simple because you become so rooted, because now it's not the church. I'm the church. I'm the church. And he said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. If you would, I want you to stand all over this place today. If you could, I want you to come.